Hello, my most amazing artists. Today we are going to make a landscape painting, practicing 4 acrylic painting techniques. 1, 2, 3, 4 acrylic painting techniques. That is, we're going to practice washes with shades and tints. And we're going to practice sgraffito. We're going to practice scumbling or dry brushing. And we're going to put together mixed media all in one piece. It's going to be amazing. Let's get started. To get started, I have my messy mat laid down here to catch any paint that might come off the paper so it doesn't get onto the table. And I have my palette, my paints, and water cup and brush. So to practice our tints, and shades, we are going to fold our paper into 6 sections to help us with the blending and color mixing. So we're going to start by folding our paper in half. Then we're going to do our best to just fold each section into 3. It's a little tricky. It does not need to be perfect, but we'll have 3 sections on the bottom, 1, 2, 3. And 3 sections on the top. So if you're playing along at home, that's 3 on top, 3 on the bottom, for a total of 6 sections. Woo-hoo! All right, we're gonna get our paints on our palette. We got some blue here. That is what color I chose for the sky. You can choose any color you would like for the sky. I'm gonna go with blue. And to make my shades, I am going to add black. To make my tints, I'm going to add white. All right, I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. And this 4th section here, I'm going to paint just my straight sky color. So mine's blue. Yours could be any color you would like. I'm going to get my paintbrush really wet here. And we're going to do a wash. A wash is great for large areas of paint that you want to fill in, like a background of a sky, landscape, anything where you need to fill a large area. We're going to add water to our paint so it's nice and juicy. What will happen when we do this and then paint it onto our paper is that it's going to be very translucent, or we're going to be able to see through it very easily. And it should go on your paper fairly easily. If you have to do a lot of redipping of your paint and it looks really thick, then you need to add more water. It should be very easy to spread across this section of the sky. Okay. Now that I have my sky color painted, I'm going to go in the top 2 sections here and practice shades. Now for shades, I'm going to pull some of this paint just right off my palette onto its own little pile, and I'm going to add black. But we need to be careful because black is a very strong color. You only need a little bit of it to be able to make your shades. You can always add a tiny bit and then add a bit more if it's not enough. It's easier to add more. You can't take it away. So black is pretty powerful. I might add just a teeny bit more so I can kind of see a difference in color between these two. Once I have my shade mixed up, I'm going to add water again to thin it out. We're making a wash with water. Once I kind of got it nice and runny, I'm going to put it on above where we just painted with. Okay, where these 2 meet here, you can use your brush and even just dip it in a little water and just kind of blend it together. That will help it look more like a sky, blending from one color to the next. All right, I got that finished. Now I'm gonna add more black to this because I want it to become darker. Again, where these two meet, we can use a little bit of water. You can go back and add a little more paint and just kind of blend those together. The fancy art word for this would be gradient, that it slowly blends from one color to the next. All right, now that we've got our shades for our first tints. The shades and tints, we're gonna give our paintbrush a good wash to get that black out. So remember, you have your cup of water here. You're gonna push down on the bottom of the cup with your paintbrush to release the paint. And then we're gonna draw an X on the paper towel. This will help keep your bristles all straight and lined up. So we keep our brushes nice and ready to paint. Here, we're gonna work on tints on the bottom half. Tints. I'm gonna grab some more of this blue paint here. And I'm gonna add a little bit of white. Now, white is not as strong as black, so we might need to add a little bit more to help to make a difference in the color. But I got a little bit there, and I can tell between these two that there is a little bit of a difference. So once I have my color, I can go ahead and add my water to thin it out to make my wash. We're gonna add more white for the next section. Add more water. Again, you want it to be really thin. If it's taking you a long time to paint in the section and it's looking kind of thick, then you need to add more water. It should not be thick. It should kind of be runny like a watercolor paint. All right, we're gonna add the rest of our white here. Give her a good mix, add some water. We're ready to roll for the last one. All right, go ahead and move this to the drying rack and we'll move on to the next step. Next, we're going to do the scumbling technique, which is just a really fancy way of saying we're going to scrape paint off of the paper. So you're going to start out by using your land color. I'm going to use some green. You can pick whatever color you would like for your land. And we're just going to paint it onto our paper. We want it to be kind of nice and thick. We're not going to add water this time to make a wash. And you're going to have to work in sections because your paint is going to need to be wet in order to scrape it away. If I were to paint this whole thing, parts of it would probably dry before I would have a chance to scrape some of the paint away. All right, then I'm going to use some of these tools. Here they have interesting edges, and I'm going to use it just to scrape the paint away. And this is kind of a play thing. You can see how it works, what you like best. If you don't like it, you can just use your brush and paint over it. And try again. You can try out all these different tools. Each one works differently, making different patterns. Another thing you can use is a marker cap. They make nice circles. This is kind of a chance to experiment and play with what you think works best and what kind of design you like to see. You could even add another color if you would like to kind of make a multicolored effect. So I could take some of my green, take some yellow, to add a little bit of interest. Make your color a little more interesting. You can actually, to apply this, you could use the double loaded paintbrush technique. That's where you dip your paintbrush in one color, dip it in a second, and then you paint with it to help you get that tie-dye color blended effect. Oop, and I'm picking up a little pink from my messy mat. That's all right. All right, now that our painting is dry, it's time to put it all together. You need to pick a top of your painting. If you would like your scene to have a daytime sky, it would be this side. If you would like your scene to have a nighttime sky, you're going to use the other side. I think I'm going to make it have a nighttime sky, so I'm going to flip it this way. flatten it out here a little bit. And first we're going to practice scumbling or dry brushing to make the clouds. For scumbling or dry brushing, you're going to need a stiff brush. So the brush should not bend too much when you tap on the edge. If I were to use like this big brush that I just used for my washes, clean her off here, when I push on it, the ends kind of bend in. Yeah, we don't want that for dry brushing or scumbling. You need an end of a brush that will hold up to being pushed down on the paper. So you're not going to use any water with this one. You're going to have a dry brush, hence the name. And you're going to take some white for the clouds. And you're going to dip your paintbrush in the paint, but then kind of tap it onto your palette to get some of the paint off. Then we're going to go ahead and make our clouds. And you do this by holding your paintbrush straight up and down and tapping onto the surface. And you will notice it is starting to make some clouds. You do not want to get a lot of paint on your brush, so don't dip it and roll it in the paint. Just dip it a little bit and maybe just tap it on your palette a little bit to get it dry. And you're going to kind of... Now, if you want to add some shading to the cloud, it's pretty easy with scumbling. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to give it a little bit of shade. If it'll come out, there we go. But you're not going to want very much, so just a teeny drop. I'm going to kind of tap it on my palette first, and then you can kind of blend the colors by tapping on the underside of the cloud. Okay, now that my clouds are complete, we're ready to add our sgraffitoed pieces of paper in as the landscape along the bottom. So what you're going to do is take your painted paper, and I ripped off a piece like this, and we're going to need to attach it onto our background. I actually have another little piece here. I think we're going to, when doing this, working from the back to the front is probably going to be your best way to do it. I notice here I didn't get paint all the way to the edge of my paper, so I'm just going to cut that little piece off. So I would lay it out first onto your painting background to really get an idea of how you want the land to look. I like ripping, but you could absolutely cut this if you would like. There's no right or wrong way to complete this part. I thought the ripping kind of more looked like mountains or, you know, natural grass. I'm going to put in kind of 3 layers like this. I'm going to take some Mod Podge here, put a little bit onto my palette. And I'm going to use it as glue to hold down my pieces. So you're going to turn your pieces over, paint the Mod Podge on the back. And stick them down. You can also use Mod Podge over the top to hold down the edges, but you don't need to. All right, now I got my landscape paper down. Now it's really time to get creative. You can add whatever you would like over the top using a variety of mixed media materials. So I'm going to show you some patterned paper first. All right, so here I have a piece of like scrapbooking paper with a print on it. And I really like kind of these flowers on here. So I was going to rip a little piece and attach some of the flowers onto my landscape. So let's rip off a little piece here. Just really kind of like the flowers. I thought I'd add a little pop of color to my painting here. Can go ahead and put the Mod Podge on the back. I found this music paper and I just think it would look kind of cool in the sky. So I'm gonna attach some, and instead of putting Mod Podge over the top, you can actually put a wash over the top of your mixed media pieces that you're adding. So let's do that. Let's see this. Put Mod Podge on the back. And I put it on here. And then I can use the blue paint along with some water to make a wash again, just like we did for the background. And you can paint right over the top of some of these papers. You can even cut out paper to make little buildings. You could use black to make silhouettes. I think I'm just going to make some colorful paper houses to add to mine. You can always lay them out first and then glue once you have all the pieces cut out. You can also then just apply paint. You know, you can do a wash, but you could also just apply paint right over the mixed media. I think I'm going to do a little path through here to kind of draw some interest. If you want to make dots on your painting, you can just dip your paintbrush, the end of your paintbrush into the paint and make some decorative dots. Works really well. You can try all different size paintbrushes, depending on what kind of dots you would like on your painting. Just make sure when you're done dotting with the end that you wipe this off so you don't booby trap someone else into dipping their finger onto paint. So wipe off the edge of your paintbrush. Sharpies are also another great way to add detail. You probably need to make sure that your painting is dry before, but I just wanted to show you a little bit. You can definitely use it to make line, pattern. Whatever you would like to give your painting, just a little touch of something extra. All right, and finally, for your painting, you can add stamps. We can use ink, or if you'd like, you can paint right onto the stamp. Make sure you paint it on evenly. All right, so there you have it. We're finished with our painting landscapes. Let's review the paint techniques that we've learned. For the background, we use tints, and shades to create a gradient from dark to light. We then use the sgraffito technique to make painted paper for our land on our landscape. We use those tools to create patterns and shapes and interesting textures. Third, we learned the scumbling technique to create the clouds. That is where we had the dry brush and we tapped it onto the paper, and we also used kind of two different colors to create a shadow on our clouds. Then finally, we learned a whole bunch of different mixed media techniques. We used scrapbook paper, found paper with the music. You could use magazine papers. We attached those onto the background with Mod Podge. In the sky here, I washed over the top of the papers that I used. We also used the end of the paintbrush to make black dots. You can also just paint right over the top of all of your collage papers, and we use stamps. That's a lot of techniques in one project. I can't wait to see what you create.